The first thing I noticed wasn't the unfamiliar BMW blocking my usual parking spot in the driveway. It wasn't even the sound of my wife's laughter drifting through our Victorian home's thin walls at 11:30 on a Tuesday night. No, what really caught my attention was how comfortable that laughter sounded, like she'd been practicing it for months without me around to hear it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Harrison Lowrey, 38 years old, commercial pilot for Northeast Airlines. I've been flying for 15 years, and in that time, I've learned to read weather patterns, mechanical failures, and passenger moods with the same precision most people use to read a grocery list. But apparently, I'd been flying blind in my own marriage. The red-eye from Denver had been canceled due to mechanical issues, which meant I was home 12 hours earlier than expected. Lucky me. I grabbed my flight bag from the passenger seat of my Honda and walked toward the front door, keys jingling in the crisp October air. Boston suburbs get cold fast this time of year, and our old Victorian house looked particularly unwelcoming with every light blazing and that strange car sitting where mine belonged. I could hear voices from the kitchen as I turned my key in the lock. Bridgette's voice, bright and animated in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in months. And another voice, deeper, male, with that particular brand of confidence that comes from never having to work too hard for anything. Harrison's frequent flyer miles expire in March, Bridgette was saying as I hung my jacket on the coat rack. We could easily get first-class tickets to Costa Rica. He never uses them anyway. Sounds perfect, babe, the male voice replied. I've been really eager to get back to Central America. The energy there is just so much more authentic than this corporate wasteland. I stood in the hallway for a moment, flight bag still in my hand, processing what I was hearing. Babe. She was calling someone else babe while planning a vacation with my airline benefits. The rational part of my brain, the part trained to handle emergencies at 30,000 feet, kicked in immediately. Don't react. Gather information. Assess the situation fully before making any decisions. I walked into the kitchen. Bridgette looked up from the laptop screen she'd been sharing with a man I recognized from old photos as Silas Bennett, her ex-boyfriend from college. The one she'd described as a free spirit who just couldn't commit to the conventional lifestyle. He was 40 now, with graying temples and the kind of deliberately casual outfit that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. His feet were propped up on my kitchen table, and he was drinking from my favorite coffee mug, the one Bridgette gave me for our 5th anniversary. Harrison! Bridgette's voice jumped an octave. You're home early. I thought your flight didn't get in until noon tomorrow. Mechanical issues, I said, setting my bag down carefully. Silas. Hey, man. Silas didn't bother to get up or remove his feet from my table. Bridgette's been telling me all about your pilot gig. Must be nice, all that travel. It has its benefits, I replied, looking directly at the laptop screen where a Costa Rica travel website was still open. I see you two are making good use of them. Bridgette closed the laptop quickly. We were just looking. Silas has been going through a really tough time lately, and I thought maybe a change of scenery might help. A tough time, I repeated. His band broke up, she explained, as if this was a tragedy on par with a natural disaster. And his living situation has been unstable. I've been letting him stay in the guest room for a few weeks while he gets back on his feet. This was news to me. I'd been flying the Denver-Boston route for the past month, which meant I was gone 3 or 4 days at a time. Plenty of opportunity for Silas to make himself comfortable in my house, apparently. How thoughtful of you, I said. Both of you. Silas finally looked up from his phone. Look, Harrison, I hope this isn't weird for you. Bridgette and I have a lot of history, but we're just friends now. Soul friends, you know? Sometimes people connect on a level that transcends conventional relationship boundaries. I nodded slowly. In my peripheral vision, I could see Bridgette watching my face carefully, probably trying to gauge whether I was going to cause a scene. She needn't have worried. 15 years of flying had taught me that the most dangerous situations were often the ones that looked calm on the surface. Soul friends, I said. That's beautiful. Exactly. Bridgette's relief was palpable. I'm so glad you understand. I was worried you might be. Well, you know how some men get about their wives having close male friendships. Possessive, Silas added helpfully. Insecure. Unable to trust their partners to maintain healthy boundaries with other people. Right, I said. Insecure. I walked to the refrigerator and pulled out a beer, taking my time with the bottle opener. Both of them were watching me now, waiting for some kind of reaction. Bridgette had that particular expression she got when she was testing boundaries, chin slightly raised, eyes bright with challenge. She wanted to see how much she could push before I pushed back. The thing is, I'd already seen enough. The comfortable way Silas had settled into my space, the easy intimacy in how they'd been planning their vacation, the fact that Bridgette had been hosting her ex-boyfriend in our home for weeks without mentioning it to me. But most telling of all was the way she was framing the conversation, not as an apology or explanation, but as a test of my character. "So," I said, taking a sip of my beer, "how long has this been going on?" "How long has what been going on?" Bridgette's voice carried just a hint of defensiveness. "This," I gestured vaguely between them, "the soul friendship, the staying over, the vacation planning with my frequent flyer miles." Silas and Bridgette exchanged a look. It was quick, but I caught it, the kind of wordless communication that develops between people who spend a lot of time together, people who share secrets. "Harrison," Bridgette said carefully, "I think we need to have an honest conversation about our relationship." "I'm listening." She took a deep breath, and I could see her shifting into what I'd come to recognize as her difficult conversation mode. Shoulders back, voice steady, words chosen for maximum impact. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about what I need to be happy, what I need to feel fulfilled as a person, and I've realized that the traditional marriage model just isn't working for me anymore." "The traditional marriage model," I repeated. "Monogamy," Silas clarified. "It's really just a social construct designed to control women's personal choices and limit human connection. Bridgette is too evolved to be constrained by those kinds of arbitrary boundaries." I looked at my wife. "Is that how you feel?" "I feel like I should be free to love whoever I want to love," she said. "And I love Silas. I always have. That doesn't mean I don't love you too, but I'm not going to pretend these feelings don't exist just because society says I should. So you want to love both of us." "I want to be authentic to myself," she said. "I want to stop living a lie." I nodded thoughtfully. "And what does this authenticity look like exactly?" "It looks like honesty," Silas said. "It looks like adults having mature conversations about their needs instead of sneaking around and lying to each other." "Mature conversations," I said, "like planning vacations with someone else's airline miles while they're out of town working to pay for the house you're staying in?" Bridgette's cheeks flushed. "That's not fair. You know I contribute to this household." "You do," I agreed. "Your flower shop brings in what? About $1,500 a month after expenses?" "Money isn't everything, Harrison." "No, but it pays for everything, including the guest room where Silas has been staying rent-free while figuring out his living situation." "This is exactly the kind of small-minded thinking that keeps people trapped in unfulfilling relationships," Silas said. "You're reducing human connection to a financial transaction." I finished my beer and set the bottle down on the counter with a soft clink. Both of them were watching me again, waiting to see how I'd respond to this philosophical challenge. Bridgette looked almost excited, like she was finally getting the confrontation she'd been building toward. "You're right," I said finally. "I am being small-minded." Bridgette blinked. "You are?" "Absolutely. Here you are trying to live your truth and embrace authentic love, and I'm worried about airline miles and rent money. How petty of me." She smiled, the tension leaving her shoulders. "I'm so glad you understand. I was afraid this was going to be much harder." "Why would it be hard?" I asked. "You found your soulmate. You should be with him." "Well, I want to be with both of you," she said quickly. "I mean, that's the whole point of rejecting monogamy. I don't have to choose." "But I do," I said. The smile faded from her face. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're asking me to accept a situation where you get everything you want. Me, him, financial security, emotional fulfillment, Costa Rica vacations, and I get to share my wife with her ex-boyfriend. Yeah, that's not rejecting social constructs, Bridgette. That's just being selfish." "Harrison, I'm not finished." My voice stayed level, but something in my tone made both of them go quiet. "You want honesty? Here's some honesty. You've been having an affair with Silas for months. You've been lying to me, disrespecting me in my own home, and spending my money on another man. And now you want me to not only accept it, but celebrate it as some kind of spiritual evolution." "It's not an affair if I'm being honest about it," Bridgette said weakly. "You weren't being honest about it. You were hiding it. And now that you've been caught, you're trying to reframe it as enlightenment." Silas stood up from his chair. "Look, man, I think you're misunderstanding the situation here. Bridgette and I have a connection that goes beyond physical attraction. We're talking about love in its purest form." "Love in its purest form," I repeated. "Is that what you call sleeping with another man's wife in his house while he's working?" "We haven't slept together," Bridgette said quickly. I looked at her for a long moment. "Bridgette, I've been married to you for 8 years. I know when you're lying." She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Silas put his hand on her shoulder in a gesture that was clearly meant to be supportive but looked possessive to me. "Okay," she said finally. "Yes, Silas and I have been intimate, but that doesn't change the fact that I love you both." "Actually, it changes everything," I said, "because now I get to make a choice too." "What kind of choice?" I looked at both of them, my wife and her lover, standing in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, planning their vacation with my airline miles, asking me to subsidize their romance while pretending it was about spiritual growth. "You said you're keeping your ex-boyfriend and I should accept it," I said. "Well, I've thought about it, and you're right. I should accept it." Bridgette's face lit up. "Really?" "Absolutely. You should be with the person you want to be with. You should live authentically. You should follow your heart." "Oh, Harrison, I knew you'd understand once you really thought about it. You're such a good man." "I am," I agreed, "which is why I'm going to make this easy for you." "Make what easy?" I smiled at her, the same calm smile I used with nervous passengers during turbulence. "I'm walking away." The words hung in the air for a moment. Bridgette stared at me, confusion replacing the joy on her face. "What do you mean, walking away?" "I mean, I'm leaving, tonight. You want to keep your ex-boyfriend? Keep him? You want to reject the traditional marriage model? Reject it. You want to live authentically? Live authentically. Just do it without me." "But Harrison, that's not what I meant. I want both of you. I want our marriage and my relationship with Silas. And I want a wife who doesn't sleep with other men. Looks like we both have to make some compromises." Silas stepped forward. "This is exactly the kind of binary thinking that keeps people trapped in toxic patterns. Why does it have to be all or nothing?" "Because that's what marriage is," I said. "All or nothing. At least that's what it was when I signed up for it." Bridgette's eyes were starting to fill with tears. "You're really going to leave? Just like that? Just like that? But what about our life together? What about the house, the shop, our plans? What about them? You've made new plans. With Silas, using my frequent flyer miles. Those were just ideas. We weren't serious about... You were serious enough to look up flights. You were serious enough to move him into our guest room. You were serious enough to sleep with him." I shrugged. "Seems pretty serious to me." I picked up my flight bag and headed for the stairs. "I'm going to pack. You two can finish planning your Costa Rica trip. Just use his frequent flyer miles instead of mine." "I don't have any frequent flyer miles," Silas said quietly. "Then I guess you'll be flying coach." I was halfway up the stairs when Bridgette called after me. "Harrison, wait. Can't we talk about this? Can't we work something out?" I turned back to look at her. She was standing at the bottom of the stairs, tears streaming down her face, looking genuinely shocked that her carefully orchestrated revelation wasn't going according to plan. "We just did talk about it," I said. "You told me what you wanted. I'm giving it to you. But I want you too. No, you want me to pay for it. There's a difference." I continued up the stairs, leaving them standing in the kitchen. As I reached the landing, I heard Silas say, "Maybe this is for the best, babe. Now we can really be together without any complications." "Shut up," Bridgette snapped. "Just shut up." I smiled as I opened our bedroom door. The turbulence was just beginning. The next morning, I was sitting in my favorite booth at Murphy's Diner, 3 blocks from Boston Logan Airport, working on my second cup of coffee and my first real plan for revenge. Across from me, Angie Martinez was shaking her head and stabbing her scrambled eggs with more violence than they probably deserved. "I can't believe that snake," she said for the 3rd time since I'd finished telling her about the previous night's conversation. "And I really can't believe that pretentious asshole had the nerve to put his feet on your kitchen table." Angie's been my co-pilot for the past 6 years, and in that time, she's become the closest thing I have to a best friend. She's 34, divorced, brutally honest, and has exactly 0 patience for what she calls emotional manipulation, disguised as spiritual enlightenment. She also has an MBA from Boston University, and a talent for seeing through people's financial bullshit, which makes her the perfect person to help me figure out my next move. "So what's the plan?" she asked, leaning forward. "Please tell me you're not just going to roll over and let them have everything." "I'm not rolling over," I said, "but I'm also not going to do anything stupid. No slashed tires, no dramatic confrontations, no burning bridges I might need later." "Boring." "Strategic," I corrected. "Bridgette thinks she's got this all figured out. She gets to keep the house, the shop, the comfortable lifestyle, and her soulmate. She thinks I'm too nice, too conflict-averse to really fight back. Are you?" I considered this. I used to be. But that was when I thought we were on the same team. Now that I know we're not, the rules have changed. Angie grinned. Now you're talking. What's the first move? I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of our joint checking account balance. As of this morning, I've moved exactly half of our liquid assets to a private account. Completely legal. My name's on everything. How much are we talking about? $43,000. She whistled. That's going to sting. It gets better. The flower shop lease is in both our names, but I'm the primary signatory. I called the landlord this morning and gave 30 days' notice. Can you do that without her consent? According to the lease terms, either party can terminate with proper notice. I checked with a lawyer friend before I made the call. Damn, Harrison. You don't mess around when you get motivated. 15 years of flight planning teaches you to think ahead, I said. But that's just the beginning. The real beauty is that Bridgette has no idea what's coming. She thinks last night was a negotiation. She thinks I'll cool off and come crawling back once I realize what I'm giving up. What are you giving up? A cheating wife, a mortgage on a house I barely get to enjoy, and the privilege of financing her boyfriend's midlife crisis. I'm devastated. Angie laughed. So what's next? Next, I wait. Bridgette's going to try to fix this, but she's going to try to fix it on her terms. She'll want to renegotiate, find some compromise that lets her keep both me and Silas. When that doesn't work, she'll get desperate. And when she gets desperate, she'll make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? The kind that cost money she doesn't have and reveal exactly who she really is to everyone she cares about impressing. My phone buzzed with a text message. Bridgette, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. Come home. I showed the message to Angie, who snorted. Home. Like it's still your home when she's moved another man into it. Notice she's not apologizing, I said. She's not asking if we can work things out or admitting she made a mistake. She's telling me to come home and calling my reaction ridiculous. Are you going to respond? Eventually, but not yet. Let her wonder for a while. We finished breakfast and drove to the airport together. I had a Denver turnaround that afternoon, which meant I'd be gone until Thursday morning. Perfect timing. It would give Bridgette and Silas a few days to get comfortable, to start making assumptions about how this was all going to play out. As we walked through the terminal, Angie grabbed my arm. Harrison, I have to ask, are you sure about this? I mean, really sure? Because once you start down this path, there's no going back. I thought about the question seriously. Was I sure? 8 years of marriage, gone. The house we'd bought together, the life we'd built, the future we'd planned. Was I really ready to walk away from all of it? Then I remembered the sound of Bridgette's laughter the night before, the comfortable way she'd been planning her vacation with another man, the casual dismissal of my feelings when I'd tried to object, the way she'd looked at me when she announced she was keeping her ex-boyfriend, like I was a problem to be managed rather than a husband to be respected. I'm sure, I said. She made her choice. Now I'm making mine. The flight to Denver was smooth, giving me plenty of time to think. Angie was working the cabin while I handled the cockpit, but during our break she came up to check on me. You're being awfully calm about this, she said. Most guys would be losing their minds right now. Most guys don't spend their careers managing crisis situations at 30,000 feet, I replied. You learn to compartmentalize. You learn to focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. And what can you control in this situation? My response, my choices, my future. What about Bridgette's future? That's up to her and Silas. They wanted to be together. Now they get to figure out how to make that work without my financial support. My phone had been buzzing intermittently throughout the flight with messages from Bridgette. I'd been ignoring them, but during our layover in Denver, I finally took a look. Harrison, please call me. We need to discuss this like adults. I know you're upset, but running away isn't going to solve anything. Silas thinks maybe we should take a break from each other while you and I work things out. See? I'm willing to compromise. The bank called. Why did you move money out of our account? That's our money. Harrison, this is childish. Call me back. I showed the messages to Angie, who read them with increasing amusement. I love how she's framing this, she said. You're being childish and running away, but she's being mature and reasonable. Classic manipulation. Notice how the compromise is that Silas will take a break from her, not that she'll end the relationship, I said. She's still trying to manage the situation instead of actually addressing it. Are you going to respond? Not yet, but I am going to make a phone call. I dialed a number I'd looked up that morning. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. Pinnacle Property Management, this is Bob. Hi, Bob. This is Harrison Lowrey. I spoke with you this morning about terminating the lease on the flower shop at 847 Industrial Boulevard. Right. 30 days notice, effective immediately. I've got the paperwork right here. Great. I wanted to ask you about the security deposit. When can I expect that back? Soon as the property's inspected and cleaned. Shouldn't be more than a week after they're out. That's a $2,500 deposit, if I remember right. That's right. And Bob? When you serve the notice, make sure you serve it during business hours. I want to make sure the tenant sees it personally. Bob chuckled. You got it. Sounds like there's a story there. There is, but it's almost over. After I hung up, Angie looked at me with something approaching admiration. You're really going to destroy her business? I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply exercising my legal right to terminate a lease that I co-signed and have been helping to pay for. If her business can't survive without my financial support, that's not my problem anymore. When will she find out? Tomorrow, probably. Bob likes to serve notices first thing in the morning. And then what? Then she'll realize this isn't a negotiation. It's a divorce. The flight back to Boston was delayed by weather, which gave me more time to think about the next phase of my plan. Bridgette would be panicking by now. The flower shop was her pride and joy, the thing that gave her independence and identity beyond being my wife. Losing it would force her to confront the reality of her situation. She couldn't afford her lifestyle without me, and Silas certainly couldn't replace my income. But I wasn't done yet. The shop was just the opening move. The real game was about to begin. When we finally landed at Logan, it was nearly midnight. I had 12 hours before my next flight, which meant I could go home and sleep in my own bed, or I could stay at the airport hotel and let Bridgette spend another night wondering where I was and what I was planning. I chose the hotel. As I was checking in, my phone rang. Bridgette's name appeared on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Hello, Bridgette. Harrison, thank God. I've been worried sick. Where are you? I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Are you coming home tonight? This isn't my home anymore, remember? You're living authentically now, with Silas. Harrison, please. I think I made a mistake. I think I got caught up in something that wasn't real, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. I sat down on the hotel bed, genuinely surprised. This wasn't the conversation I'd expected. You're sorry? Yes, I'm so sorry. I never meant for things to go this far. Silas and I, it was just emotional support at first. I was feeling neglected, and he was going through his divorce, and we were just helping each other. But then it became something else, and I got confused about what I really wanted. And what do you really want? I want my husband back. I want our life back. I want to fix this. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of the old feeling. The love I'd had for her, the life we'd built together, the future we'd planned. It would be so easy to say yes, to go home, to pretend the last 24 hours had been a bad dream. Then I remembered the sound of her laughter as she planned her vacation with another man. Where's Silas now? I asked. He's still here, but he's packing. I told him he needs to leave. You told him he needs to leave. Yes, tonight. Right now, actually. And he agreed to that? There was a pause. He's not happy about it, but he understands that I need to focus on saving my marriage. Put him on the phone. What? Put Silas on the phone. I want to hear him tell me he's leaving. Another pause. Harrison, I don't think that's necessary. You don't need to talk to him. If he's really leaving, if you're really choosing our marriage over your relationship with him, then it shouldn't be a problem for me to talk to him. Hold on. I heard muffled conversation in the background, voices raised in what sounded like an argument. After a few minutes, Bridgette came back on the line. He doesn't want to talk to you. He thinks it would be inflammatory. Inflammatory. He thinks you're trying to humiliate him. I'm trying to verify that he's actually leaving. If he's not willing to confirm that directly, then he's not really leaving, is he? Harrison, you have to trust me. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing our marriage. No, Bridgette. You're trying to manage the situation. There's a difference. What do you mean? I mean, you're not sorry you had an affair. You're sorry you got caught. You're not ending your relationship with Silas because you realize it was wrong. You're putting it on hold because I'm not reacting the way you expected. That's not true. Prove it. Tell me exactly what happened between you and Silas. Tell me when it started, how long it's been going on, and what you did together. Tell me the truth, the whole truth, and maybe we can start to rebuild some trust. Silence. Bridgette? I don't think rehashing the details is going to help anyone. I think we should focus on moving forward. And there it is, I said. You want me to forgive you for something you won't even admit to doing. You want me to trust you while you're still protecting him. You want to save our marriage while he's still in our house. He's leaving tonight, I told you. No, he's not. And you know he's not. You're buying time, hoping I'll calm down and accept whatever compromise you two work out between now and tomorrow. Harrison, I'll make this simple for you, Bridgette. I'm filing for divorce. You can keep the house, you can keep Silas, and you can keep your authentic lifestyle. Just do it without my money. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. But what about the shop? What about our life together? What about... The shop lease has been terminated. You'll get the notice tomorrow morning. As for our life together, you ended that when you moved another man into our bedroom. I hung up before she could respond. 20 minutes later, she called back. I didn't answer. She called again an hour after that, and then again at 2 a.m. Each time, I let it go to voicemail. Finally, around 3 a.m., I listened to her messages. Harrison, please pick up. We need to talk about the shop. You can't just destroy my business because you're angry. I talked to a lawyer. You can't terminate that lease without my consent. I'm going to fight this. Okay, I'm panicking. I admit it. I'm scared and I made a huge mistake and I need you to help me fix this. Please call me back. Silas left. He's gone. It's just me now, and I'm choosing you. I'm choosing us. Please don't throw away 8 years of marriage over one mistake. I deleted all the messages and went to sleep. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The knock on my hotel room door came at 6:30 in the morning. I'd been awake for an hour, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over Boston Harbor, so I wasn't surprised when I opened the door to find Bridgette standing in the hallway. She looked terrible. Her hair was uncombed, her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and she was wearing the same clothes she'd had on 2 nights ago when I'd found her planning her Costa Rica vacation. She was also holding a manila envelope and wearing the expression of someone who'd spent the night preparing for battle. We need to talk, she said. Good morning to you, too, I replied, stepping aside to let her in. How did you find me? I called every hotel near the airport until someone confirmed you were registered. She walked into the room and sat down heavily in the desk chair. Harrison, we have a problem. We have several problems. Which one are you referring to? She opened the manila envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. I went to see a lawyer last night about the shop lease. And he says you're right. You can terminate it without my consent because you're the primary signatory. She looked up at me with something between anger and desperation. But he also says I can sue you for intentional interference with my business. I poured myself another cup of coffee from the room's small pot. That's an interesting theory. What damages would you claim? Lost income, the cost of relocating, damage to my reputation. And how would you prove that I terminated the lease specifically to interfere with your business, rather than simply to remove myself from a financial obligation I no longer wanted to be responsible for? She stared at me. What do you mean? I mean, you'd have to prove intent. You'd have to show that my primary motivation was to harm your business rather than to protect my own financial interests. Given that you were planning to use my money to take vacations with your boyfriend, I think a judge might find my desire to limit my financial exposure pretty reasonable. You're doing this to punish me. I'm doing this to protect myself. There's a difference. She put the papers back in the envelope with shaking hands. Harrison, I can't afford to relocate the shop. The deposit alone would be $5,000, plus moving costs, plus the time I'd lose being closed during the transition. It would destroy everything I've built. Then you should have thought about that before you decided to destroy our marriage. I made a mistake. I admitted that. I'm trying to fix it. No, you're trying to minimize the consequences. You want to go back to the way things were, but you don't want to accept responsibility for changing them. I sat down on the bed across from her. Tell me something, Bridgette. When did the affair start? It wasn't an affair, not at first. When did it become an affair? She looked down at her hands. July, 3 months ago. Yes. And when did you decide you wanted to keep both me and Silas? I never decided that. It just happened. When did it happen? I don't know. Gradually. When did you move him into our house? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. I nodded. And when were you planning to tell me about any of this? I was trying to figure out how to handle the situation. You were trying to figure out how to have your cake and eat it too. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I love you, Harrison. I know I screwed up, but I love you. Doesn't that count for something? You love me, I repeated. But you also love him. Yes. And you want to keep both of us. I want to keep you. I've ended things with Silas. Have you? Yes. I told you he left last night. Where did he go? I don't know. Back to his apartment, I guess. He doesn't have an apartment, Bridgette. He got evicted 2 months ago. That's why he was staying with us. She blinked. What? You didn't know? Your soulmate didn't mention that he's been homeless since August, that our guest room wasn't just a convenient crash pad. It was his only option. That's not... He said he was staying with us because he wanted to spend time with me. I'm sure that's part of it. But mostly he was staying with us because he didn't have anywhere else to go. And now that I've kicked him out, he still doesn't have anywhere else to go. And how do you know this? I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of a conversation I'd had with Manny Rodriguez, who worked airport security but moonlighted as a private investigator. I had him do a background check yesterday. Silas was evicted from his apartment in August for non-payment of rent. His band broke up because he wasn't paying his share of their rehearsal space rent. His credit cards are maxed out, and he owes money to at least 3 different people. Bridgette stared at the phone screen. I don't understand. You don't understand what? He told me he was between places by choice. He said he was simplifying his life, getting rid of material possessions that were holding him back spiritually. And you believed him. Why would he lie? Because he needed a place to stay and a woman to support him, and you were convenient. The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually recoiled, pressing back into the chair as if I'd slapped her. That's not true. He loves me. Maybe he does, but he also needs you, and there's a difference between being loved and being used. She sat in silence for a long moment, processing this information. I could see her trying to reconcile the romantic narrative she'd constructed with the harsh financial reality I'd just presented. Even if that's true, she said finally, it doesn't change the fact that I made a mistake. It doesn't change the fact that I want to save our marriage. What would saving our marriage look like? We go to counseling. We work through this. We rebuild trust. And Silas? Silas is out of the picture, completely. What about the shop? You reinstate the lease. I promise I'll never use our money for anything personal without discussing it with you first. What about the $43,000 I moved to my private account? You move it back to our joint account. I nodded thoughtfully. So your plan for saving our marriage is that I pretend the last 3 months never happened. I continue to financially support the lifestyle that enabled you to have an affair, and I trust you not to betray me again based on your promise. I know it sounds like a lot to ask. It sounds like everything to ask and nothing to give. What do you mean? I mean, what are you offering me in exchange for all this forgiveness and trust? What do I get out of this deal? She looked confused. You get your wife back. You get our marriage back. I get the wife who cheated on me back. I get the marriage where I can't trust my partner back. What a bargain. Harrison, that's not fair. I'm offering to change. I'm offering to make this right. No, you're offering to go back to the way things were and hope I forget what you did. That's not change, that's denial. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. What? Bridgette asked. Bob from the property management company. Your shop lease has been officially terminated. He served the notice an hour ago. Her face went white. Harrison, please, don't do this. I'm begging you. You should have begged me before you slept with another man in our house. I'll do anything you want. Just please don't destroy my business. Anything? Yes. Okay. Here's what I want. I want you to call Silas right now and tell him exactly what I just told you about his financial situation. I want you to ask him directly if he's been using you for money and a place to stay. And I want you to do it on speakerphone so I can hear his answer. Why? Because I want you to hear the truth from him. I want you to understand exactly what kind of man you threw away our marriage for. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands. And if I do this, you'll reinstate the lease? If you do this, and if his answer convinces you that I'm right about him, then we can discuss the lease. She dialed Silas's number and put the phone on speaker. It rang 4 times before he answered. Bridgette, thank God. I've been trying to figure out where to go. Do you think Harrison's cooled off enough for me to come back to the house? Bridgette looked at me, then back at the phone. Silas, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Of course, babe. What is it? Were you evicted from your apartment in August? Silence. Silas? Who told you that? It doesn't matter who told me. Is it true? It's more complicated than that. How is it complicated? Were you evicted or not? The landlord and I had a disagreement about the lease terms. I decided it was better to find a new place than to deal with his negative energy. A disagreement about lease terms, Bridgette repeated. He was very rigid about the rent payment schedule. I tried to explain that my income as an artist is irregular, but he wouldn't work with me. So you weren't paying rent. I was paying rent, just not always on the exact date he wanted it. And your credit cards? Are they maxed out? Another pause. Bridgette, why are we talking about this? Money is just energy. It flows where it needs to flow. Answer the question, Silas. I have some temporary cash flow issues, but that's normal for creative people. The important thing is that we don't let material concerns interfere with our spiritual connection. Bridgette looked at me with growing understanding. Silas, when you told me you were staying with me because you wanted to spend time together, was that the whole truth? Of course it was. So if I had my own place, if I wasn't married to Harrison, if I didn't have access to his income, you'd still want to be with me? Bridgette, what's going on? Why are you asking me these questions? Just answer me. If I was broke, if I was living paycheck to paycheck, if I couldn't afford vacations or nice dinners or a comfortable house, would you still love me? Love isn't about money, babe. You know that. That's not what I asked. I love you for who you are, not what you have. Then prove it. I'm about to lose my shop. Harrison's divorcing me. I might lose the house too. I might end up with nothing. Are you going to stick around and help me rebuild, or are you going to find another woman with a guest room and a steady income? The silence stretched on for nearly 30 seconds. Silas? Bridgette's voice was barely a whisper. Look, babe, this is exactly the kind of toxic situation I was trying to help you avoid. Harrison is manipulating you, trying to turn you against me because he can't handle the fact that you've outgrown him spiritually. Maybe we should take a break until you can see the situation more clearly. Bridgette closed her eyes. A break? Just until you can get some perspective. I think Harrison's negative energy is affecting your judgment. So, when I needed you to choose me over your comfort, you chose comfort. But when I needed to choose you over my comfort, you expected me to choose you? That's not... You're twisting this around. No, I'm finally seeing it clearly. She hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long moment. Well? I asked. You were right, she said quietly. About everything. I usually am. It's one of my better qualities. So what now? Will you give me another chance? I looked at her sitting there, defeated and humiliated, finally understanding the true cost of her choices. A part of me felt sorry for her. She'd been played by a man who saw her as a meal ticket, and now she was facing the consequences of her naivety. But a larger part of me remembered the sound of her laughter as she planned her vacation with him. The casual way she'd dismissed my feelings. The months of lies and deception. The arrogant assumption that I would simply accept whatever arrangement she offered. No, I said, I won't. But you said... I said we could discuss the lease if his answer convinced you I was right about him. We can discuss it. The answer is no. Harrison, please. I understand now. I see what he was doing. I see what I did wrong. I'm sorry. I believe you are sorry. But sorry doesn't undo 3 months of betrayal. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. And sorry doesn't change the fact that you only ended things with him when you realized he was using you. What does that mean? It means you didn't choose me over him, because you realized you loved me more. You chose me over him because you realized he couldn't give you what I could. That's not love, Bridgette. That's just pragmatism. She started crying again, but this time it was different. This wasn't the manipulative tears of someone trying to get their way. This was the genuine grief of someone who finally understood what they'd lost. So that's it? 8 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it all away? I'm not throwing it away. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess. I stood up and grabbed my flight bag. I have a flight to catch. You should probably start looking for a new location for your shop. And Bridgette? What? Next time you fall in love with someone, make sure they can afford to take you to Costa Rica on their own dime. I left her sitting in the hotel room, crying into her hands, and headed for the airport. The real revenge was just beginning. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my new apartment in Seattle, drinking coffee and reading the email that confirmed everything I'd hoped for. Bridgette's flower shop had officially closed. She'd been unable to find a new location she could afford, and without my financial support, she couldn't cover the costs of relocating her business. According to Angie, who'd been keeping tabs on the situation back in Boston, Bridgette had been forced to sell her inventory at a loss, and was now working at someone else's flower shop for $12 an hour. Silas, meanwhile, had moved in with a woman named Cleo who owned a yoga studio in Cambridge. Apparently, his spiritual journey had led him to another woman with a business and a spare bedroom. Some people never learn. I'd filed for divorce the day after our hotel room confrontation, and Bridgette hadn't contested it. She couldn't afford a lawyer, and frankly, she didn't have much ground to stand on. Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still matters when it comes to asset division, especially when the adulterous spouse was using marital funds to support their affair. The house was in both our names, but I'd been making the mortgage payments, and I had documentation proving that Bridgette had been using our joint accounts to pay for Silas's expenses. My lawyer was confident that I'd end up with the larger share of the equity when everything was finalized, but the house was just money. The real satisfaction came from knowing that Bridgette was finally experiencing the natural consequences of her choices. She'd wanted to live authentically, to follow her heart, to reject the conventional marriage model. Well, now she was free to do all of that on her own budget. My phone rang, interrupting my morning coffee ritual. Angie's name appeared on the screen. "How's Seattle treating you?" she asked when I answered. "Can't complain. The weather's better than Boston, the flying's good, and nobody here knows about my messy divorce." "Speaking of your messy divorce, I have some interesting news." "I'm listening." "Remember Bridgette's friend Cleo, the one I mentioned who owns the yoga studio? The one Silas moved in with?" "That's the one." Well, it turns out Cleo and Bridgette used to be business partners. They co-owned the flower shop until about 6 months ago, when Bridgette bought out Cleo's share. "Interesting. Why did Cleo sell?" "According to my source at the gym where they both used to work out, Cleo found out that Bridgette was skimming money from the business accounts to pay for personal expenses, including apparently some romantic getaways with a certain unemployed musician." I sat up straighter. Bridgette was embezzling from her own business? Not embezzling, exactly. More like creative accounting. She was using business funds for personal expenses and then trying to cover it up by manipulating the books. Cleo caught her and demanded to be bought out immediately. And now Silas is living with Cleo. Who, by the way, apparently has some very interesting stories about Bridgette's business practices, stories she's been sharing with anyone who'll listen. I couldn't help but smile. Karma's a beautiful thing. It gets better. Remember how Bridgette was always talking about her artistic vision and her creative independence? Well, it turns out the flower shop she's working at now is owned by her old high school rival, someone named Jennifer Walsh. The name sounds familiar. She was the maid of honor at your wedding, the one Bridgette spent the entire reception complaining about because she thought Jennifer was trying to upstage her. Right, the one who wore the inappropriate dress. That's the one. And apparently Jennifer is not the most sympathetic boss. She's got Bridgette working the early morning shift, handling all the funeral arrangements and hospital deliveries, the unglamorous stuff that Bridgette used to pawn off on her employees. How do you know all this? I may have struck up a conversation with Jennifer at a coffee shop near the flower market, purely by coincidence, of course. Of course. She's actually quite nice. We're having dinner next week. I laughed. Angie, are you dating my ex-wife's boss? I'm exploring a connection with a successful businesswoman who happens to employ your ex-wife. There's a difference. And if this connection develops into something serious, then Bridgette will have the unique pleasure of knowing that her ex-husband's best friend is dating her boss. Won't that make the workplace dynamics interesting? You're diabolical. I'm thorough. There's a difference. We talked for a few more minutes about my new job, my new apartment, and my new life. After I hung up, I sat on my balcony looking out at Elliott Bay and thinking about how much had changed in just 3 weeks. The truth was, I felt better than I had in years. The constant low-level anxiety I'd been carrying around, the feeling that something was wrong in my marriage, that I was being lied to, that I wasn't getting the whole story, was gone. I could sleep through the night again. I could focus on my work without wondering what Bridgette was doing while I was away. I could make plans for my future without having to factor in someone else's deception. It wasn't that I didn't miss her. I missed the woman I thought she was, the marriage I thought we had. But I didn't miss the reality of what our relationship had become. A performance where I played the role of the oblivious husband while she played the role of the devoted wife, and neither of us acknowledged that we were both just going through the motions. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. When I opened it, I recognized Bridgette's writing immediately. Harrison, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what I threw away. I understand what you meant about the difference between being loved and being used. I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're happy in Seattle. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decide how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it entirely. Part of me wanted to respond with something cutting, something that would drive home just how completely she'd destroyed our life together. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of being angry, tired of plotting revenge, tired of carrying around the weight of her betrayal. I typed back, I am happy. I hope you figure out what you really want and find a way to get it honestly. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it wasn't cruelty either. It was just the truth. I was moving on, and she needed to do the same. Her response came back immediately. I know what I want now. I want my husband back. I want the life we had before I ruined everything. I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations don't deserve to continue. That evening, I had dinner with my new co-pilot, a guy named Marcus, who'd moved to Seattle from Chicago after his own divorce. We talked about flying, about the Pacific Northwest, about starting over in a new city. Normal conversation between two normal people living normal lives. "You seem pretty settled for someone who just moved across the country," he said over dessert. "I had good motivation to leave Boston behind," I replied. "Bad divorce?" "The worst, but also the best thing that ever happened to me." "How's that?" "It forced me to stop settling for less than I deserved." He raised his beer bottle in a mock toast. "Here's to not settling." "I'll drink to that." As we left the restaurant, Marcus asked if I wanted to grab another drink somewhere else. I considered it, but decided I'd rather go home and call it an early night. I had a morning flight to Portland, and I wanted to be sharp. Walking back to my apartment, I thought about the conversation with Bridgette earlier that day. She'd said she understood now what she'd thrown away, but I wasn't sure that was true. I think she understood that she'd lost something valuable, but I didn't think she understood why. The why wasn't the affair itself, though that was certainly part of it. The why was the months of lies, the casual disrespect, the assumption that I would simply accept whatever arrangement she offered, because I was too weak or too dependent to leave. She'd treated me like a supporting character in her own story, someone whose feelings and needs were secondary to her own desires. And when I'd finally refused to play that role, when I'd chosen to write my own story instead, she'd been genuinely shocked. But that was her problem now, not mine. I was halfway home when my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, I heard Silas's voice. "Harrison? It's Silas. We need to talk." "No, we don't." "Yes, we do. This thing with Bridgette, it's gotten out of hand. She's obsessed with getting you back, and it's affecting her ability to move on with her life." "And that's my problem, how?" "Look, I know you're angry, and I get it. I really do. But Bridgette is struggling, and I think you could help her by giving her some closure." "Closure?" "Yeah. Like maybe you could meet with her, let her apologize properly, help her understand that it's really over so she can start healing." I stopped walking. "Silas, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You want me to meet with my ex-wife, who cheated on me with you, so I can help her feel better about the consequences of her choices?" "When you put it like that, it sounds bad, but it sounds bad because it is bad. It's also not my responsibility. She's really hurting, man. She's working this terrible job, living in this tiny apartment, barely making ends meet. She's lost everything. She made her choices. Come on, don't you think she's been punished enough?" I started walking again, picking up my pace. "Silas, I'm going to explain something to you, and I want you to listen carefully. Bridgette isn't being punished. She's experiencing consequences. There's a difference." "What difference?" "Punishment is something you do to someone else. Consequences are something that happens as a natural result of your actions. I didn't take away her business to punish her. I removed my financial support because I was no longer willing to subsidize the lifestyle that enabled her to betray me. But the result is the same. The result is that she has to live within her own means instead of mine. That's not punishment. That's reality. She's learned her lesson, Harrison. She knows she made a mistake. Good for her. Learning from your mistakes is part of being an adult." "So you won't help her?" "I helped her plenty. I supported her for 8 years. I co-signed her business lease. I paid for her health insurance and her car and her vacations. I even helped her by making it clear that our marriage was over so she wouldn't waste any more time trying to save it." "That's not what I mean." "I know what you mean. You want me to rescue her from the consequences of her choices so you don't have to feel guilty about your role in creating them. But that's not going to happen. You're really just going to let her suffer." "I'm going to let her live her own life and make her own choices, just like she wanted. She said she wanted to reject the conventional marriage model and live authentically. Well, now she's free to do exactly that. On $12 an hour. On whatever she can earn with her own skills and her own work ethic. You know, like most adults do." There was a long pause. "You're a cold bastard, you know that?" "I'm a man who learned not to set himself on fire to keep other people warm. If that makes me cold, I can live with it." "She really loved you." "No, she didn't. She loved the lifestyle I provided. She loved having someone to pay her bills while she played house with you. If she'd really loved me, she wouldn't have betrayed me." "People make mistakes. And people live with the consequences of their mistakes. That's how the world works." I hung up before he could respond. By the time I reached my apartment, I was actually feeling pretty good. There's something liberating about refusing to be responsible for other people's poor choices. For years, I'd been trying to make Bridgette happy, trying to be the husband she wanted, trying to fix whatever was wrong in our marriage. But the problem was never that I wasn't good enough. The problem was that she didn't want to be married to anyone who expected fidelity and honesty in return for love and support. Now that was her problem to solve, not mine. I poured myself a drink and sat down at my computer to check my email. There was a message from my lawyer with an update on the divorce proceedings, a few work-related items, and a note from my new landlord about building maintenance. Normal stuff. Adult stuff. The kind of mundane business that makes up most of real life when you're not dealing with cheating spouses and manipulative ex-boyfriends. I was about to close the laptop when one more email came in. The sender was listed as B. Lowrey Flowers, which I assumed was Bridgette's new work email address. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Harrison, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I can't stop thinking about our conversation in the hotel room. You said I only chose you over Silas when I realized he couldn't give me what you could. You said that wasn't love, it was pragmatism. I've been thinking about that for weeks, and I think you're wrong. I didn't choose you because you could support me financially. I chose you because you were the only person who ever really saw me clearly. Even when you were angry, even when you were hurt, you still saw exactly who I was and what I was doing. Silas never saw me that clearly. He saw what he wanted to see. I know it's too late. I know I destroyed something that can't be repaired. But I wanted you to know that losing you wasn't just about losing financial security or social status or any of the practical things. It was about losing the only person who ever really knew me. I hope you're happy in Seattle. I hope you find someone who deserves the kind of love you're capable of giving. I'm sorry for everything. B. I read the email 3 times, trying to decide how it made me feel. Sad, maybe, a little angry, but mostly just empty. Like she was trying to rewrite history one more time, trying to cast our relationship as some kind of great love story that was destroyed by her momentary weakness instead of what it actually was. A marriage that faded slowly over months of lies and betrayal. The truth was, if she'd really felt that way about me, if she'd really valued my ability to see her clearly, she wouldn't have spent 3 months lying to my face. She wouldn't have moved another man into our house. She wouldn't have planned vacations with my money while I was working to support her lifestyle. She was trying to make herself feel better by romanticizing what we'd had, but I wasn't interested in helping her with that project. I deleted the email without responding and closed the laptop. Tomorrow I would fly to Portland and back. Tomorrow I would do my job, live my life, and continue building something new and better from the wreckage of my marriage. And Bridgette would figure out how to do the same, or she wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my problem anymore. For the first time in 8 years, I was free to focus on my own happiness instead of trying to manage someone else's dysfunction. It felt like waking up from a long, exhausting dream. I finished my drink, brushed my teeth, and went to bed in my own apartment, in my own city, in my own life. It was the best night's sleep I'd had in years. 6 months later, I was back in Boston for the first time since I'd left. Not by choice. Northeast Airlines had assigned me to a route that included a layover at Logan, and I couldn't avoid it without taking vacation days I didn't want to waste. But as it turned out, the timing was perfect. I was having coffee at Murphy's Diner, the same place where Angie and I had planned my initial revenge, when she walked in with a woman I didn't immediately recognize. Angie spotted me first and waved them over to my booth. "Harrison, I didn't know you were in town." She slid into the seat across from me, and her companion, an attractive brunette in her early 30s, sat down beside her. "This is Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer, this is Harrison Lowrey." Jennifer Walsh. Bridgette's high school rival turned current boss, the woman Angie had been dating for the past 4 months. "I've heard a lot about you," Jennifer said, extending her hand. "All good things, I promise." "I wish I could say the same," I replied, shaking her hand. "But Angie's told me some very disturbing things about your taste in women." Jennifer laughed. "She warned me you were funny." "She warned me you were trouble," Angie added. "But she didn't mention you were charming." We ordered breakfast and spent the next hour catching up. Jennifer was smart, successful, and had a dry sense of humor that reminded me why Bridgette had always felt threatened by her. She was also clearly crazy about Angie, which made me like her immediately. "So," I said eventually, "how's business? I hear you've got some interesting employees these days." Jennifer and Angie exchanged a look. "You want to know about Bridgette?" Jennifer said. "I'm curious. Sue me." "She's struggling," Jennifer said diplomatically. "The transition from being a business owner to being an employee has been difficult for her." Meaning she's not very good at taking direction from other people," Angie said, "especially from someone she's always considered beneath her." "She actually said that?" "She didn't have to," Jennifer replied. It's pretty obvious from her attitude. She shows up late, she argues with my instructions, and she makes it clear that she thinks working for me is beneath her dignity. So why don't you fire her? Jennifer smiled. Because she's actually very talented when she applies herself, and because watching her struggle with her own arrogance is more entertaining than cable television. That's cold. That's justice, Angie corrected. Do you know what she said to Jennifer at your wedding reception? I'm afraid to ask. She said that Jennifer would never amount to anything because she didn't have vision or creativity. She said Jennifer was the kind of person who would always work for other people instead of building something of her own. And now? Now Jennifer owns 3 flower shops and employs 15 people, Angie said. And Bridgette arranges funeral sprays for $12 an hour. Karma's a beautiful thing, I said, echoing my words from 6 months earlier. It gets better, Jennifer added. She keeps asking me for business advice. She wants to know how I built my company, how I manage my employees, how I handle the financial side of things. She's trying to learn from me. Are you teaching her? I'm giving her the same advice I'd give anyone. Work hard, be honest, treat people with respect, and don't sleep with your business partner's boyfriend. I nearly choked on my coffee. You didn't actually say that? I did. Last week, when she was complaining about how unfair life had been to her. I told her that successful people don't blame their failures on unfairness. They learn from their mistakes and do better next time. How did she respond? She cried. Then she asked if I thought you'd ever forgive her. The question hung in the air for a moment. Both women were watching me carefully, waiting to see how I'd react. What did you tell her? I told her that forgiveness isn't something you ask for, it's something you earn, and that she might want to focus on forgiving herself before worrying about what other people think of her. Good advice. She didn't take it well. She said I couldn't understand because I'd never made a mistake as big as hers. What did you say to that? I said that I'd never made a mistake as big as hers because I'd never been stupid enough to cheat on a good man with a loser who was obviously using me for money. Angie grinned. I love this woman. She has her moments, I agreed. We finished breakfast and walked out to the parking lot together. As we were saying goodbye, Jennifer pulled me aside. Can I ask you something personal? Shoot. Do you ever think about what might have happened if Bridgette had come clean about the affair instead of trying to manipulate you into accepting it? I considered the question. You mean if she'd confessed, ended it immediately, and begged for forgiveness? Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe we could have worked through it, maybe not, but at least it would have been an honest conversation instead of a con game. She thinks about that a lot, the what-if scenarios. That's natural, I guess, but it's also pointless. She made her choices, and I made mine. She still loves you, you know. No, she doesn't. She loves the idea of me. She loves the security I represented. She loves the life we had before she destroyed it. But she doesn't love me. How can you be so sure? Because if she loved me, she would have protected our marriage instead of betraying it. Love isn't just a feeling, Jennifer. It's a choice you make every day. And for 3 months, she chose to lie to me, deceive me, and prioritize another man's needs over mine. That's not love. Jennifer nodded thoughtfully. That's what I told her, actually. Almost word for word. Smart woman. No wonder Angie's crazy about you. I'm crazy about her, too. She's nothing like what I expected when I first met her. In what way? She's tougher than she looks, and more loyal. When she decides you're worth fighting for, she doesn't give up. I looked over at Angie, who was leaning against her car talking on the phone. She's one of the good ones. So are you, apparently. Bridgette may not deserve you, but she's not stupid. She knows what she lost. And that's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you feel vindicated. You were right to leave. You were right to protect yourself. And you were right to refuse to enable her bad choices. I never doubted that. Good. Because she's going to keep trying to get your attention. She's going to keep reaching out, keep apologizing, keep trying to convince you that she's changed. And you need to remember that her regret doesn't obligate you to give her another chance. I won't. Promise me. I promise. She smiled. Good. Now go catch your flight and enjoy your new life. Some of us have businesses to run and ex-wives to manage. I hugged both women goodbye and headed back to the airport. As I was walking through the terminal, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Harrison, this is Silas. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I thought you should know that Bridgette is in the hospital. She had a breakdown at work yesterday and collapsed. She's okay physically, but the doctors think she's been having panic attacks. She keeps asking for you. I thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a long moment. feeling a familiar tug of guilt and responsibility. The old Harrison would have immediately changed his flight, rushed to the hospital, and tried to fix whatever was wrong. The old Harrison would have felt obligated to rescue her from the consequences of her choices. But I wasn't the old Harrison anymore. I deleted the message without responding and boarded my flight to Seattle. 2 hours later, as we were reaching cruising altitude, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Angie. "Did Silas contact you about Bridgette?" "Yeah," I deleted the message. "Good. It's a manipulation tactic. She's not in the hospital." "How do you know?" "Because Jennifer saw her at work this morning. She seemed fine. A little dramatic, maybe, but fine." So Silas was lying. Silas was trying to get you to come running back to Boston so Bridgette could have another chance to manipulate you. Classic narcissist playbook. Well, it didn't work. I knew it wouldn't. You're stronger than they think you are. I'm smarter than they think I am. That too. How was it seeing Jennifer? Getting the update on Bridgette's new life? Satisfying, I said honestly. She's finally living with the consequences of her choices, and she's not handling it well. Do you feel bad for her? A little, but not bad enough to do anything about it. Good. She made her bed. Now she gets to lie in it. Alone. Actually, I heard through the grapevine that she's been dating someone new. Another musician, apparently. Let me guess. He's broke, unemployed, and looking for someone to support his artistic vision. Close. He's a part-time DJ who lives with his mother and drives for Uber to make ends meet. She really doesn't learn, does she? Some people never do. They just keep making the same mistakes with different people. Well, that's not my problem anymore. No, it's not. Your only problem now is deciding what to do with all this freedom and happiness. I'll figure something out. After I hung up, I sat back in my seat and thought about the conversation. A year ago, the news that Bridgette was struggling would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and second-guessing. I would have wondered if I was being too harsh, if I should have given her another chance, if I was somehow responsible for her unhappiness. Now, I felt nothing but relief that I was no longer part of her chaos. The truth was, Bridgette was an adult who had made adult choices. She had chosen to have an affair. She had chosen to lie about it. She had chosen to try to manipulate me into accepting it. And when that didn't work, she had chosen to continue making the same kinds of poor decisions with new people. None of that was my fault, and none of it was my responsibility to fix. I was free. Free to build a new life. Free to find someone who would treat me with the respect and honesty I deserved. Free to focus on my own happiness instead of managing someone else's dysfunction. As the plane descended toward Seattle, I looked out the window at the city lights spread out below me. Somewhere down there was my apartment, my new job, my new life. A life where I didn't have to wonder if my partner was lying to me, where I didn't have to subsidize someone else's betrayal, where I could trust that the person who claimed to love me actually meant it. It was a good life, a better life than the one I'd left behind in Boston. And the best part was, it was just the beginning.